Guys. Well, it's Thursday night, and here we go again. Hope y'all are having a good night and trying to stay cool. We're about 6 weeks out now from it cooling off a little bit. Just stay in there and keep fingers crossed, and hopefully it will cool off pretty soon. Um, but heat index here was like 106, 108, something like that. Felt a little worse today, but I'm trying to do my best to stay out of it as much as I can. Y'all excuse me, I just finished supper. I ran home and we did sandwiches and stuff, so I was wolfing down in a hurry. Well, Jeff, hello to Newfoundland, Canada, and Robert, good evening. Hello, Justin. Hello, brother. How you doing? Stephen, good evening. Yep, Jeff, you made it in time. We just got started. Bogdan, hello. Justin, good. When we get off, I'll try to holler at you on Facebook a second. You can fill me in. Hello, Bear. Bear's in the house. Well, Battle Rattle, good evening. 2020, good evening. Chris, hello. I look forward to this every week. An opportunity to be able to talk with y'all, chat with you. Really enjoy it. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Mr. Johnny, good evening. Fishing Golf, hello. Keep All Three, hello. YouTube Press, howdy. Yeah, I'm going through the doing a rerun improvement, I think, of the Ground Pounder series and starting and trying to fill in all the holes of you building your own kit. And so I did the one yesterday. No, that'll be posting tomorrow on the tarps. I'm gonna lay out and talk about tarp, talk about ponchos of tarp, emergency space blanket, that type deal of advantages, disadvantages, etc. I talked about the dry bag on Wednesday. I'm sorry. And then this Sunday, I'm doing one where we're going to build a fire kit and talk about what you need for a fire kit to carry along. If you need compact or bigger, what your conditions will be, things like that. But that's coming up. So it should be this Sunday. Gulf Coast, howdy. The heat over here is like it is over there. We extremely humid. I think around 2 o'clock they were talking about it was like 109, 110 with a heat index. It didn't rain, so the heat just kept inching up. We like it to rain late in the afternoon and kind of bring the temperature back down a little bit. Chris Robbins, do you know where I can find a waterproof liner for my Alice pack? Tried the ladies down there at Sampson. Like I said in the video on Wednesday, I put their stuff down there at Coffin's Military Surplus. 334-898-1770. And tell them I sent you, they'll hand select. And they've got the big, huge liner, which I've got one right over there I haven't talked about yet. You can put the whole pack in. And then they've got the smaller liners that go into it. And just call and talk to the ladies, tell them what you're looking for, and I'm sure they can take care of you. The big one, like I got over, that thing is huge, and it's made for that huge pack. It looks like a trash can, it's so big. And you could put the entire packing gear in it, roll it down, and it's got the air locker on it so you can depressure, you can let the air out of it, or you can leave air trapped in it, make it float. And if I was going to be doing canoeing, that's where I'd go, because I could put all my bulky stuff in there, seal it up, lash it to the canoe, and if the canoe goes over, it'll stay with the canoe and act as flotation. So a win-win. Dead Prepper, good evening. James Singer, hello. Gray Wolf, good evening. Well, Gray Wolf, be safe. Yeah, it ain't going to be long for y'all start getting cool. Time to go refill that propane. Do it now before it gets more expensive. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous how much everything has gone up. Common Sense Karen, good evening. Yeah, Chris, you can use just big heavy trash bags. Will do, but if you're looking for something like a roll top or something like that, yeah, call the ladies down there. Yeah, battle rattle. Let's hope it does that. The way the weather pattern's been going, it wants to throw everything toward Texas. Um, it's when the hot systems shift into the Carolinas. That's when it wants to curve in. And if it's a little high, well, that curves in and it hits the Atlantic coast. If it's a little low, then it curves in and it comes up into my area. So as long as that high pressure stays over us or centered in Tennessee, the odds of us getting a hurricane in here are just about nil because they're all going to push and then turn up. Either Mississippi or Texas is where they'll turn up. Louisiana, something like that. Usually. Tim Funk, good evening to Berlin, Pennsylvania. Kyle, good evening. Cal Tipper, hello there, Louisiana. And I'm not wishing a hurricane on y'all, but y'all throw the best parties when you got a hurricane coming. Woo! Steve Kingsbury, good evening, brother. Kodak, good evening. David Bookalter, good evening to Orlando. Shane, good evening. Scott, good evening. Shane Lawson, good evening. Yeah, that was back in the 80s. I was driving and I was down in, I wasn't in New Orleans. On one side I was in Slidell. And we had a minor hurricane coming. And the company I worked for, I had to stay there because there was something that we were had on the ground, part of a military radar array that was for doing training for Pensacola and stuff like that. And it was just going to be a heavy rainmaker. And I'm staying at this little mom and pop fish camp. And so I got in there. Now, to be honest, I was thinking this tin roof ain't going to stay on. You know, I'm going to end up having, I park my truck on the back side of the other building so it'd be protected and stuff like that. I got in there and was sitting there, and of course, power went out like that. Power went out, and then I heard the lights come back on. The generator kicked in, and the guy came up and knocked on the door and said, "We got some stuff up here. Time to eat. The party is beginning." Oh, they know how to party during a hurricane down there. I'm here to tell you. Tracy, thank you very much. Cody, good evening. Timothy, hello to Titusville, Florida. Bill, hello. Okay, James. Hope you're doing well. Glad you enjoyed the videos. Elron, good evening. Cody, hello to Live Oak, Florida. Johnny, hello. Heath Price, good evening. Yeah, it's been a couple of years since we've had a lot of hurricanes. Now we've had one here or there, okay. But the last real one that it really concerned me was Michael when it came in. It was not that big, but it was super intense. That was the thing. It was like a ballerina. It spiraled up. It got smaller, and it pulled in. It became super intense, and it was a Cat 5 when it hit the ground, when it hit shore. And for about 100 miles, from the Gulf. All the pine trees are leaning one direction because where the eye came ashore, where you come from Dothan, Alabama, down 231 to Dothan, all the trees are leaning because that's where the circulation was pulling back toward the Gulf. And I mean, just there's 60, 70, 80 miles of all the pine trees are leaning, just like that, back toward the Gulf. That's how much pull that thing had, 70 miles inland, and was still that kind of power. So those are the ones you got to worry about. Sportsman 83, hello to Cleveland, Georgia, and Tans, hello to Arizona. Blackie, have you read Horace Kephart's biography, Back of Beyond? I did in the past. There was a time back in the early 2000s. I read a lot of Kephart stuff, the Southern Highlanders, his cooking books, all of that. In fact, I've got 2 of his books over there on the bookshelf. And I read a couple biographies of him. So, yeah. He's a very interesting character, very complex character. He had a drinking problem, but he loved the woods, and he focused on something and tried to stay focused. Hello, number 1 Big Bear. Oh, we'll see. Reinhardt, good evening. Yeah, David, lived in Destin for 30 years, went through a lot of, there was a long time there, it seemed like every year, the Panhandle of Florida, something like that, was getting a close hit, a little whack, dead on hits. It was just like, it seemed like every 2 months. We got another one coming in, I remember that. Bob, hello to Southwest Ohio. Tom Wheeler, thank you for tuning in. Battle Rattle, I appreciate it. I really do. Creek Camper, good evening, fellow Alabamian. Creek Camper's got a good channel, y'all. If y'all want to go see somebody down in my part of Alabama, he's got a good channel. Yeah, I'll let y'all look behind the scenes a little bit. The powers that be at YouTube are making it real tough on us to get money. That the amount of views is the same. The amount of people clicking on is ballpark the same. The amount of videos you're producing is ballpark the same, and yet you're making a quarter of the money you were making. That's the reason you've seen so many big name channels have closed up shop or greatly reduced in the last year, and really in the last 8 months. And it's because they're not really funding us the way they were. And luckily I'm not in a position where this is the only income I got. I'm producing the videos because I want to. But I use that income. That's what helps pay for me to go on these trips and stuff like that. So it doesn't dip into the, monthly budget. So it does make a difference whenever suddenly the paycheck is a quarter of what it was, because they just decided they don't want to pay you this month. They say, well, they're not buying the such and such. The big companies have got, okay. YouTube wants short little videos. They want to be like TikTok and be 30-second videos. What I do, you couldn't do on a 30-second video. They want 30-second videos, high speed, pop, pop, pop. Let's go. The advertisers, how many advertisements can you put on a 30-second video? Maybe one, And so they want long run, they want an hour-long video, so they can put 3 or 4, especially on somebody's channel they like and isn't controversial. They're going to get them canceled like Budweiser did and stuff like that. And so they want to kind of, how about we advertise with these over here? And so you can see the discrepancy there, where the powers that be running the show, they want these little bitty videos, mostly political stuff. They'll throw money at that. But if you're doing anything else, me, On the other hand, the advertisers who are paying the money, they want something they can put their thing on and not necessarily political. And so usually during election year, people like me who are not controversial and don't express opinion one way or the other, you're going to do pretty good. But this year hadn't been that way. And so I'm betting that whichever way the election goes, I'm betting you're going to pull a plug, because from the year begins, from the financial point of view of the world, begins February 1. And so through January 31st, they've got their advertising budgets. And a couple of years ago, I had it where mine suddenly just rocketed up in November. I mean, it was like triple what you normally make. He wasn't doing anything different. I didn't, I get good views, but man, what's this? And it's because suddenly that advertising dollar, they just kind of pull the plug, gave you money that they're actually giving you, which you're supposed to get like, really, they claim a lot more, but you're actually getting like 10%. They keep 80, you get 10. So if you make $1,000, that meant they made $10,000 off of you. You can kind of ballpark it. So that's the reason you're seeing a lot of big channels having trouble right now, coming out and doing stuff. That's what's going on. Okay, back to this. Stacy, good evening. OLA, hello to Norway. Thank you for tuning in. Paul. Oh, Brisbane. Cool. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, Tracy, a Deshiro. It actually is very similar to a hurricane. Buck 112, good evening to Rome, Georgia. Johnny, Blackie, do you have a pay app to make donations directly to you so YouTube can't take a chunk out of it? The only thing I have is a PayPal. Because to my knowledge, that's the only thing I got. I have had people say that I should set up a lot of the big channels. How they do it is by the Patreon and stuff like that. But Blackie ain't that bright in that. So, and to be honest, I feel kind of guilty asking for that. So, but they got super chat on here, but they get a hunk of that, and etc. So, other than my PayPal, that's it. Grimmer, hello to Iceland. Gray Wolf, I hear you. Is it sacrilegious to put a Williams fire sight on the 49 pocket? My eyes just don't see. No, it ain't. It's if you can't shoot it, it's a wall hanger. And I've had to open up and work mine. And when you go back and look at the originals, there were a lot of those guns that a different sight was put onto them one way or another. So do what you need. Shore Sharp, hello. Tennessee Smoky, good evening. How you doing? Well, Mike, hello to Elrod, Alabama. Thanks for coming in. Ken Albert, good evening, brother. Chris Bird, Blackie, what's the river level looking like up your way? It's kind of low, actually. We're getting rain, but not a soaking rain. The ground's absorbing it. And so the river level, there is, I'd say, the river I go over down here in Choctawhatchee quite often, I'd say it's probably like 4 to 6 feet is the river level there. And usually that river is 3 times wider and about 12 foot deep. So we will get a heavy rain. We'll get a little bit of a rise, but the average right now, you can float parts of it, but you're going to walk a lot of it too. Well, hello to Lamb and Doc. Thanks for tuning in. Tim Pierce, good evening. Johnny, if you'll look down in the description box, I talk about going to downndirtywoodscraft at gmail.com. If you send me a request there. Tell them you want to donate or whatever. I'll send you the PayPal link there if you'd like. And thank you very much. You don't have to, but I do greatly appreciate it. Battle Rattle, that's it. They are a money-making company. They don't produce jack, but they want a big hunk of you. Which they do produce the servers. They do all that. I'll give them that. So I can't truly say they don't do nothing. But, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Bill Hines, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. All of you is why I do this. Really. It ain't for me. It's because I want to try to share as much knowledge as I can. So I do my best to try to pass it on. Ken Albert, yeah, we didn't even have AC in our rigs. Well, none of the rigs I had ever had it. You had a 260 air conditioning, 2 windows down, and 60 miles an hour. And back in them days, you were governed at 65. You could hold it to the floor, and you wasn't going to get maybe 62 out of it. Lamb Dot, watch the video about North Georgia Bushmasters Gathering. Is that what you go to? Up there, I go to the Georgia Bushcraft Gathering, and I'll be there this November. The schedule right now is, and I'll give away that in just a minute. I'll dig that out. In September, I am going to the Gather Thing in West Virginia. And I have got if you're going to the Bushcraft, the Gather Thing in West Virginia, that's being put on by Jay Hercules, Madison Poole, and a few others. They've asked me to come up that. It's a gathering they've started up there. I'll be up there. Me and Dakota are going. It's in September. And if you're going, I have a code they gave me. And the code is Blackie Freebie is the code. Blackie, Blackie, Freebie, Freeebie is the code. The first 10 people that send that get free tickets. They ain't got to pay nothing to get in. I'm going to put that in the video for Sunday. So I'm giving y'all a little head start. So anybody that's going to be coming up there, you can get in there. October, we're doing North Georgia. We're doing the Silver Wolves class. And then the weekend or so after that, I'm having a camp out at the lake out here at Geneva State Forest. It is not officially a gathering, but I will be there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and several people driving in from a long way. They just want to come and hang out and camp. So anybody that wants to is welcome to come on out. Other than having to pay $5 a day to the state to use the site, it's free. Then in November, I'm going to the Georgia Bushcraft Gathering, where I'll be there at the tent with the fuel, the fires, and we'll be doing demos and stuff at the tent and classes for the participants there at the tent. Let's see, that is November. December, I'm going to the Rewild Gathering down near or in Florida, and I've got the name of it written down, guys. I'm sorry, I'm lousy with names, but I'll be going down there. And then I think I'm off in January, and then around February, we're talking about doing a winter survival camp. We'll put out more information about that as quick as we can. That will not be strictly a Silver Wolf. It will be anybody that wants to go, and it'll be winter survival camping. So we're going to talk winter survival and just winter camping, the two sides of it. Those that want to go out and try to rough it and try to survive with minimal kit, we'll have classes for that. Those that want to go luxury camp and learn how to stay warm in a camper or whatever, we're going to do classes on that. So we're going to do the two sides of the spectrum at that. and that will be announced a little bit later. Once we get the details ironed out on that. And then I believe the end of March is the target we're looking at. I think the very end of March is going to be my gathering, and that will be a week-long event. And then April, I believe, is Georgia bushcraft again. I'll be going back up for that. And then I think we've tentatively kind of bounced around the idea of doing another Silver Wolf class in May. Like he's staying busy. So I'm pretty much running. Okay, Dead Purple, do you dislike tents? No, actually, I like tents quite a bit. But it just depends on the thing. I prefer a hammock for most of my camping during the year. In the winter, I do prefer a tent. I do have small tents and great big wall tents and everything else. It just depends on what we're doing. So I do that, and I do have a One Wind stealth tent that's going to be in an upcoming video for the ground pounders. Talking about if you don't want to do a tarp, but you want to do a tent. And I'm also going to get one of the U.S. military pop-up tents that they use today, the thing that replaced the shelter half, and do a video on it. We're going to talk about tents as well, because some people just prefer tents, and I did too for a long time, as long as I could camp on the ground. Tennessee Smoky, Bear's in here right now. He's got a video coming out this Sunday, another always with us. He's trying to bounce a lot of things around right now, but when it cools off, he'll get more videos coming out. Gulf Coast Pine Belt, Blackie, during this time of year, the heat, what's the best fishing lure for clear water creek fishing? Southwest Mississippi is where I go. Luck switching from the Ozark fishing. The two things I'd recommend are a spider and a mouse are really, really good. You want the current to take it, because if you're doing on creeks, especially clear, make sure you got a really clear leader coming up to your line. Throw it upstream and let the current bring it back toward you, and that way it naturally bobs along. Sometimes I would put a float further up the line to give it a little bit of a tug, and so I have had great success throwing it upstream and letting it float to me, and I've also had success of just simply casting it, letting it drift away from me as far as I want it to go, and then hold the line steady, and then do like 2 reels and hold it, 2 reels and hold it, make it look like something struggling trying to go against current. And that has worked really, really well, because it's hot. They don't have eyelids. If the water's clear, they've got to get up under a shade or get on the shady side, because fish don't have eyelids, and the glare just irritates them like it does us. So they're going to go deep. If they can't go deep, they're going to go to the shade. If they can't go to shade, they're going to turn and face away from the sun to try to have a minimum aspect of it as they can. And that's, if the sun's over my shoulder, throw it upstream and let it come back toward me. That way they'll see it. Or if I'm floating downstream, the sun is directly ahead of me, throw it, and like I said, and let it go down. And that's more likely they're going to be facing away from the sun, the direction they're facing. And that's normally the best way that I have learned to do it. Jane, Blackie, what is the best way to shrink my new Silver Wolf hat? It's slightly large. On some of them, if you will lift it up and look up under this hat band, there's actually a little adjustment tab. On some of them, I don't know if it's the one you got, but I know they found some of them that Heather was saying selling did have that. If not, wet that part and put it in the sun. Don't put it in a dryer, but wet that part and put it in the sun, and do it several times and see if it'll dry it up a little tighter. Best I can tell you. Gordon, I found a drill paddle for a kayak. It's basically a 5-foot rod with a propeller that runs off a hand drill. Have you used one? I have not used one like that. I know what you're talking about. and they can be pretty handy, especially going back upstream. But I have not actually used one. I pole, which I don't do kayaks, I do canoes. And we used to go upstream by poling. We would stand up in the canoe and use about a 12, 14-foot pole with a flap on the end of it so it wouldn't sink in the mud. And we would push ourselves upstream and then put that down and just slowly, quietly float back. So I didn't use many motor things. I was pole. Chris, you're on the Choctawhatchee River in Westville. Cool. I'm on the upper end of the Choctawhatchee in Alabama. Well, not upper end. I'm near Dothan. Dothan Enterprise in there, Daleville, at the headwaters of the Choctawhatchee. I canoed the Choctawhatchee all the way to the Gulf back when I was a small boy. And it was a lot of fun. Tim Pierce, Blackie, what's the deal with notifications on your Thursday night live? Never get anything until you're on YouTube. Bottom line, they don't consider me important enough. Bottom line, and a lot of people never even get a notification of any kind. So it just, I've done everything I'm supposed to do on my side. They just don't think I'm that important. I'm sorry. Stephen Drake, Blackie, when is your next run on your haversacks or new ones? I'm doing some right now. And so that email down there in the description box, if you want to send me a thing, I'm going to, I think, keep taking orders for about 2 more weeks because I've got a run that started back in June and May. That's, talked to Jeff the other day, Jay, and it's en route. Should be about 2 weeks or less from now. They should show it to me and I'll send that order. And then the Red Hawk run that we put in, that's next month. That'll arrive and I'll send that out. And what I'm taking orders for right now is for October. So that's what's going on with that. Do you ever do any foraging, like making flint strikers? I just finished a batch using foraging, 1084 steel. I have not played with a blacksmith set in many, many years. I did play with it many years ago in Rendezvous. I made my own stuff like fire steels. I made tent pegs. I made all that stuff. But I have not played with it in quite a while. And I do have several strikers. And I have promised, and this year I'm going to get around to doing it, doing a flint and steel series, talking about how to do tips and tricks for flint and steel. Because I used that for 20 years in Rendezvous and got pretty good at it. So I need to really do that. Donald Mike Gideon, good evening. Trooper 2221, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Yeah. Big Buck, hello to New Jersey. Satchmo, good evening. Woo, Trooper. Blackie, I've been to the higher elevations of New Mexico last week. I live at 19,000. Any tips for quick acclimating to the higher elevations? Deep breaths. Now, what I mean by that is this. Not all the time, but I want you to do this if you think about it once an hour. Take a deeper breath as you can. Hold it for just a second and then try to suck a little bit more in. So it's like, and you're stretching your lungs. Okay? Getting as much surface area inside the lung working as you can. And whenever I was working for the government contractor and I was going to Montana, I was going to Dakotas, I was going Colorado, I was going up all over the Rockies. And here I am, a little redneck from lower Alabama. And you get up there, there ain't no oxygen up there. That's the only way I found to help me get used to it, because I'm doing a job. They don't care you can't breathe. It's a multi-million-dollar radar unit. You're going to put it together. And coming from 300 feet elevation and going to 2,800, 3,000 foot elevation, that type deal, yeah, it just, that's the only way I have found that helped me get air, was to do that and get the body used to deep breathing deeper to do it. Yeah. Patriot preacher, exactly. Got to be in really good shape. Tim Pierce, thank you. I hope it does give it to you. Piedmont Outdoors, good evening. Oh, about right. You're not nagging. I went and visited Grouch the other day, and Grouch can't get out in the heat no more than I can. And he's organizing his house. Last October, his wife passed away. And so now it's all those things that, like he said, some things he set up 40 years ago. And he don't even remember them, and he's having to go back through all that paperwork and all that stuff, all these policies, all these investments, all these things that he's done over his life, and refigure out who, what, where, when. And so he's been really, really wrapped up with that. And so I went over and spent a couple hours with him, and I'm helping him with some of the stuff. But there will be stuff, we will get the time. I'm hoping when it cools off a little bit, we'll be able to go out and sit on his deck, at least, and do some of that and talk. But he wants to do it too. It's just ain't got the time at the moment. So I understand. We're going to get there. Terry, good evening. Cody, yeah, I'll be coming down to the wild camp. That's the plan. And I'll be doing a class, and I'm getting Scab of our boy outdoors. He lives down there. He's going to come with me. And we're going to do a discussion on the kukri and the big camp knife, what it can do. And that's the basic plan right now. Burkhalter, have a good night. Elvin, good evening. Yeah, also down there at the wild camp, I spoke to him back this winter, or right after the first of the year. He went and canoed a river down there. And that looked really interesting because it was winter and all the gators are resting, the snakes are resting, and they don't hibernate, but they get out of the way, you know what I mean? And that really clear water and all that, that'd be interesting. And it wouldn't be so hot. I could haul my canoe down there. He's about 4 hours from me, 4.5 hours. Haul my canoe down there and let's go and canoe that river. I think that'd be really cool. When I was a younger man, I went down into lower Florida. I went to the Everglades, went to a lot of places like that, trying to test yourself and, want to get out there. I camped out in the Everglades. My uncle used to go to Okefenokee. I went to Okefenokee. But he went to Okefenokee, would go down to the Everglades and go camp out on the islands down there. Had this little bitty teacup chihuahua. That was his alarm. I mean, he got to where he wanted to go. He just run the canoe up into all that grass and everything, get out and stomp him out a place to lay down, and throw him down a sleeping pad and lay down, And that little bitty dog was scared of everything. And all night long, he would just walk a patrol around him. And if a snake or a gator come up, he'd go to barking like crazy, And my uncle would get up and either shoo off the gator or get rid of the snake or whatever. And then the next morning, that poor little dog would be so scared to death. They'd load back up and he'd put it in the top of the pack basket and he'd curl up and go to sleep. He'd sleep all day and bark all night. But he'd let you know if you had a problem. He'd be backing up against you going, Dad, 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 Dad. He'd wake you up. Dakota's in the house. Hang in there, brother. Well, hello, Big E the Knife Nut. Good evening. I get one of these big old bottles about every 6 months, and I'm going to clean it, put water in it, and this will replace the one I carry in my vehicle. So the one that's in the vehicle right now, that's the water I put in March. And so this one will be the one that'll be replacing it, and it'll be in there for 6 months, and I'll rotate it. That way I've always got a source of water. I've got my bug out stuff, and I've got a source of water in there. A source of water that ain't real expensive, and I can hand it off if I've got to. Like I said, come up on a car wreck or something, I've got water I can sacrifice and go here, not have to hand off an expensive canteen or something. Tennessee Smoky, you're working on a project, a World War II musket bag, or musette bag, but I don't know what you're talking about. Content list from different websites. One item, D rings is what you meant to say instead of D rations. Are difficult to find. Are you looking for the metal one, the brass ones, or are you looking for the iron ones? That's the question. Ronald, good evening. Oh, Roger, hello to Italy. Oh, yeah. Well, go enjoy some pizza. Todd Gibson, good evening, brother. Oh, y'all going to go take a run down to Sepulveda. That'd be awesome. Hello, Heather. Ooh, okay. Blackie, I have a full tang kukri with British proof marks, probably a number 2. Question, the preferred grind angle for the curved area nearest the handle. That, I don't know the exact angle. I just sharpen it. But I do know I make it steeper. That's my knife edge. That first inch and a half is my knife edge. And I will do whatever it takes to get that thing shaven sharp, because that doesn't do anything in chopping. That is strictly a detail work within that area. And so I just sharpen it. Now I have taken, if the angle is a little too thick, I have taken files and thin it down. Then I've taken paint stir sticks and put onto them sandpaper and use that as strops to hone it down to where I could get to where I want. And I've gone all the way out to 3,000 grit before and polish it up and just that 1 or 2 inch. I'm sorry I can't give you an exact angle off the top of my head. I do everything by sight and by hand. So, but I can tell you an 11 degree is what we put on a WC knife, and it holds a real fine edge. So you might want to try 11. Oh, yeah. D rations. Ooh, I don't know. Let me think about that, Smokey. I need a dog that won't go running off chasing butterflies and squirrels and don't forget where home is. That's going to be interesting. I've had several really good dogs. The best was a pure mutt that at first glance you'd think was a golden retriever. but we called him Rusty, and he was a mix of everything. But he would hunt, he would point, he never wandered off. Just a good dog. But those you just got to find by luck, and usually it ain't no pedigree, nothing. Some of the dumb, not marking anybody, but I can tell you some of the dumbest dogs I've ever seen were full pedigreed and just dumb as a post. So, Johnny, did Coffin give you a date on how many update on how many they sold? Don't know. Hadn't talked to him. But when I went down there the other day, I told him what I was doing. I said I'm going to do the series, and I want to know what is available now, in modern gear. Instead of me talking about some old piece of gear that's now an antique. And we walked around, and she pointed out the things that they had, and that's the reason I made a list and etc. for them. And I finally got my Pathfinder one. That'll be coming up. I'm gonna be doing some canteen cooking and stuff with the Pathfinder set. And these Molly sets are $10 a piece down there at Kaufman's. So, but they got them in desert. They got them in the ACU, the camo, the gray stuff, and then they got just very few of those. So that's one had for quite a while. But y'all excuse me a minute. Yeah. One of them times when you're talking, it's like you got going on in years. Yeah. Queensland healers are famous for staying right by your side unless you give them a job. That's true. Callahoola cur dogs can be that way too. Well, hello, Grandpa Buckshot. Welcome to the party. Elvin, Blake, I see you and Bear have the new Stanley Cook set. When can we expect to see one of those being used? Not terrible long. That's going to be coming up real soon. In fact, I plan on doing some of that myself because, especially when I go talking about the canteens and cook sets and the ground pounder, I'm going to talk about that as a viable thing to go with a Grail. If you want to go that way, that makes a good kit to go with the Grail. Then I'm going to talk about standard old U.S. Army cook set, and then I'm going to talk about the Pathfinder and talk about from the guy I ain't got it handy, ain't in arm's reach, but the British Crusader set. I've got one of those. That's really, if you guys are over in the UK and all, you can get those cheap. It ain't cheap in Alabama, but we'll talk about cook sets, how to use them, etc. And that set going with the Grail will be part of that discussion. That's definitely going to be like a two-parter because we're going to cook some with that. About right, I hear you. It'll kill. Good evening. Oh, Washburn Billy, good. Oh, Anarchy Television. Hello to Panama City. Good evening. Donald, the cookbook is a running joke. We were doing an always video or whatever, and I was talking about cook stuff, and Bear chimed in that I was doing a cookbook. I am not doing a cookbook. I've got too many other things in the fire to do that. And I put it back on him. I said, no, Bear's cookbook. He's the big cook of the bunch. He likes to cook a lot, which I like to cook, but he likes to cook. And so the cannon and stuff like that, it's going to end up being a Bear cookbook. You watch. Oh yeah. Tim Pierce, my uncle raised hunting dogs, bird dogs, and tracking dogs, and rabbit dogs, coon dogs. He loved it. I think his remuda was like 60 dogs that were competing in championships, and then he would sire them off, or he would offer puppies from them and stuff. He made pretty good bit of retirement money doing that. He knew how to raise and train dogs. Um, and one of the funny ones was the Chihuahua that was actually my aunt's Chihuahua. And so it was a little bitty puppy, and he was training the new puppies. And so he's getting out there, and he's using a starter pistol. And they were in the backyard, and he was working more with this one that was a little gun shy, getting him used to him, getting him pointing him making the pop. And he was using this little bit of super light, sounded like somebody clapped real hard. That was about it. Well, dang, if that dang little bitty Chihuahua being raised by around all these dogs thought he was going to point. And before you know it, he'd come up and he'd kind of pretend to point. He'd point his nose at it, and he wouldn't lift his foot up real good, but you'd tell he was trying to point. And so my uncle got to playing along with it and thought it was just funny as all get out. And then they were going to one of the Florida championships for field dogs. And back in them days, everybody brought the dog in and would set it up on the table so everybody could say whose dog was whose, and they would inspect it, take a picture of it, and etc. for whatever this competition was. And so my uncle came in, and when he came in, he brought his dog, and he also brought this like a canteen carrier on his hip. And he got up there and he pulled out and set the Chihuahua up there, and he just stood there and stuck his little head up there. Everybody howled and laughed, but they took his picture and stuff. And he got a Chihuahua, a teacup Chihuahua to point. It was something else. Good evening, Pink. Thanks for dropping in, brother. Gary, hello to Raleigh, North Carolina. Or Raleigh. Sorry. Shouldn't have said it wrong. Raleigh, North Carolina. Yeah. Yeah, the Lambo, that new Stanley set is what we're talking about. The handle will come off, and you can utilize it for working with a grail. In fact, I think there's the handle, and there's the cups. One grail, one pot, and you put there we go. The handle goes back on. You can take the handle off, and you can make it where it folds over the top or folds on the bottom, and then the new and improved lid with a little silicone tab on it. You can stand up and grab real easy, not burn your fingers. And it fits the much bigger coffee cups. And if you're somebody that likes to brew coffee, tea, or something like this, is a good set for that. That's what this really is a brew set. But I mean, I like the fact you get your whole hand in it far easier than the old one. The old one was this size, and so they made it bigger. So you got your markings on it and all for your size and etc. But you can get your hand down in there to clean it a lot easier than the other one did. And like I said, the handle actually is supposed to go on like this. There it is. like that, and it folds over to lock over the top. There we go. Yeah, like that. And I like this little set. I really do. And I plan on doing a little bit of cooking with it. And I like the fact it'll fit the grill real easy, turning the grill into a canteen cook set, so to speak. So we're going to deal with that whenever we do the video on cook sets and canteens and stuff, which to me is the perfect one-person set. Is like a U.S. Army type. But Canterbury just brought out the new butterfly handle one, and I bought that. And I haven't had the Pathfinder canteen. I've seen them, a lot of my friends use them, but I run mostly the old Army type. And so for the ground pounder, since that is the most current, the one that everybody seems to be referencing to, I just went and made up another set, like Canterbury had, they showed in this video. This has got the heavy cover lid in it, and then I got the stove in it, and then I got the cup with the butterfly handle, and then I got the canteen, and I went and added 2 D-rings to the molly strap so I can carry it like he did. But I like that because I can unscrew the lid and not have to take it out and just drink out of it as is. You just grab this thing and unscrew and drink and screw back. You ain't got to take it out of something, which is pretty handy. Same thing I like on the old original. Elrod, Basset Hounds make really good porch dogs. They're actually really good tracking dogs as long as you get them to stay on topic. Because they go like, hey, what's that? And they go that way, That's one thing. But other than that, they actually are really good noses. Trooper. Okay, Blackie, speaking of the Grail, can you speak a little bit on the superiority of it of the filters? Yes. Grails are expensive. Let's just get that out right up front. But what the Grail gives you that the other ones don't is it filters out viruses. And that's a big thing these days. And other things in the water. Most of the filters are thinking about Giardia, okay? And things like that give you upset stomach. But the problem with it is like the Chattahoochee River over here, which is the river that's the boundary between Alabama and Georgia. Atlanta dumps so much, quote, cleaned water from their sewage and stuff that's been, quote, cleaned into it. And you test it, and you don't have that much bacteria, but you have nicotine, caffeine, heart medicine, blood pressure medicine, cold medicine. When we ingest that, it filters through our body and we pee it out. It don't go away. We just get rid of it. It sits in us for a X amount of time, and then we pee and it's gone. Well, we put it in the toilet, and when they do their bit for a city, they don't take that out. They're just trying to stop the biological part of it, the live stuff, but the chemical is left, and then they're dumping that into the waterway. So much so that my part of Alabama right now, you're not supposed to eat fish from large areas of my state because of mercury poisoning, because it's leaching out of things north of us. So a simple filter like you get that does filter the water, does get rid of Giardia and stuff like that, is a very good way to go for keeping from getting sick. But the other things, if this water source that you're connected with is alongside of farmland and the pesticides washed in here, that pig farmer up the road, he's going to wash a lot of bacteria in there. But the standard filter will get rid of that. But it ain't going to get rid of them pesticides. It ain't going to get rid of that mercury. It ain't going to get rid of that other stuff. The Grail will. The Grail has got such a fine filter that it will get it out of there and leave you with much cleaner water. And that's the reason I chose it. Yes, it's expensive. Tell you that in a heartbeat. but it allows me to get my water from any source down here, and I don't have to worry about what I'm ingesting in the long run. And so that's one of the reasons I like the Grail, especially if you're going to be going to places you may have never been here before, you know. And the cheaper filters will do a really good job, almost every one of them, for making sure you're not going to get sick. And if I'm going to be weight conscious, yeah, that's heavy. And this Sawyer is much smaller, much lighter, and etc. It sure is. Um, and for maybe this weekend camp out, it ain't that big a deal. But if you're going to be doing like I do during the fall and winter, where I'm out here a lot and I'm getting my water from a lot of questionable sources sometimes, because this is what's easy and convenient to get to, this is a real advantage for me. And so that's the reason I was willing to put the money and go for something so expensive. Gulf Coast, how can you get microplastics chemicals out of your water without a filter? Boil it doesn't do anything. You got to evaporate it. And even then, you've got to distill it a couple of times and hope to either break down the chemical and turn into something that don't matter, or just filter it out. And that, you see where it starts becoming a problem. You know, your best bet is just to get a filter. Mike Simmons, good evening, sir. Whirlwind Gin, good evening. Thank you. Frisbee says hi from Toronto. Awesome. It'll kill. It's only certain parts of the state, and I've got somewhere around here this year's book when they're talking about it, and the state put out a thing saying in my two particular part of the state, mercury, and so you just got to keep up on it. When and where and how this stuff is out and thing like that. I'm telling you, do not eat fish no more than once a month. You know, that's caught in these waters where I'm at because of the mercury in the fish. So you got to give the body time to kind of flush it out, and that kind of hurts the survival idea of running trot lines. And you're going to be eating predominantly fish for a while. That could be a problem. Yeah. Yeah, it'll kill that. Never thought about the chemical exposure in the waterways. Most people don't. And I talked to biologists, and I had a friend of mine that's a biologist, and he works out of Lake Eufaula, which is in that river system of the Chattahoochee that is the border between Alabama and Georgia. And he talked about, they're taking sample fish, sample from everything, and mussels and stuff that are in the water because they're filter feeders. And he said the amount of nicotine and caffeine and stuff like that we ingest in massive amounts and then pit. And when you got a city of a couple of million upstream, you just got to taint the water. Heart medicine, whatever. If it's a super common medicine, you're probably going to be able to find that trace in the water downstream from a major city. And Atlanta is a major city. So I wouldn't worry about it half a mile up a creek from that river. But any water from the river itself, I would be really concerned about because of that, knowing upriver is that big, huge city. Yeah, James, water around here is so much tannin in it, it looks like cooked coffee. Yeah. Down here in Florida, we got a place called Black Creek. There's a reason it's coming out of a swamp with tannin so thick. I mean, you dip up a cup of it and it looks like coffee. And oh, is it bitter? And well, it's tannins, you know. Heather, good night. Thanks for listening. Will, how do you feel about Charter Arms revolvers? They were good working man's cheap revolvers. Um, and Charter Arms Bulldogs were very highly regarded as a personal carry gun for a long time. Right. Mike Simmons points out that West Lake, Alabama, is fed by the Coosa River and is polluted by a battery factory in Rome, Georgia. Yeah. Andy Knight, good evening. There's a very good documentary about a young man canoeing I think it was the Coosa here in Alabama. And it's called River Dreams. And it's about an hour long thing that he did a documentary of it. And he shows all the beauty in the upper watershed of the lily that grows in the water. It's one of the rarest plants in the world, rarest flower. And then you come down to Point X, and there's a big paper mill, and there's a 30-inch diameter pipe sticking up in the river and just boiling out this black, putrid smelling stuff. And he said for the next 60 miles of river, that's all you smell is that putrid smell, is that they're just dumping it. And it's part of the wood paper making process. And it's all the tannins is what it is. And of course, they just pay the fine. It's instead of cleaning it up, it's cheaper to just pay the fine because the fine is so small. They just pay the fine. So the state's happy because they're getting the fine money. But the river from there down stinks. I mean, it smells like a sewer. Horrible. Yeah, battle rattle. If you've ever drank from a military water buffalo, you're immune to all those things. Saying that's me, a class action lawsuit commercial in the future. I believe it. I really do. Blackie, any thoughts on the British MOD survival knife? If it's the one that I'm thinking of that's really thick and got those wooden scales on it, and it's a really thick knife, I had one of them years ago, and it was not a good knife. It was a very good wedge, um, but it was so thick it was difficult to get a good edge on it. And for a chopper, a wedge, split something with it, cut the steel bands on a airdrop pallet, yeah, it was okay. But I ended up using it as a fro and just batoning with it because it did not work for me as a knife. It just was a edge, if it's the one I'm thinking of. Kevin Smith, thank you for dropping in. Welcome to the party. Carlos, good evening. Oh yeah, if you ever drank from water buffalo, well, even beyond that, when you travel, and this is something my daddy taught me, who was a long range truck driver. You drive around the country, water smells and tastes radically different. And there's many places you can smell water miles away and it'll smell horrible. But the locals don't, they're used to it, you know. And my water here has got a certain taste to it, but of course I'm used to it. But I can go 30 miles east to Dothan and the water is horrible. I don't even want to get a drink with ice in it because it just tastes bad. Just give me a sealed up soda, or something strong enough to hide it. On the other end, over at Grouch's land in Andalusia, that water tastes like it's got sugar in it to me. And a lot of times I would go over there and fill up 2 5-gallon cans to bring home to have mixing water for 18-year-old scotch. So it's I like Atwater. It's very sweet over there. John Hamilton, what about the Glock knife? I like the Glock knife. I was given one a few months ago by my friend Walker, and it seems to be a pretty decent little field knife. You know, in fact, it's hanging up over here, and I did some playing around with it, and it is considered the K-bar of Europe, and as a military field knife for the jobs that a military field knife would be used for, I think it does okay. It's not a bushcraft knife. Could it be forced to serve? Yes. But as a general purpose knife, yeah, it'll do a pretty good job for that. Yeah. Um, Gulf Coast, Baton Rouge Parish has good water. I think it comes from the aquifer below Vicksburg. It'll kill. Blackie, what do you think about those Chinese SKSs? If they've got the triangle on the side of them that says 26 or whatever it was, that was military issued to the Chinese Army in the 1980s. And when they decided to modernize and go to the gun now, they overnight created the company of Norinco and just remarked them. It was a military issue gun. And they make really good deer guns. I've got one and got it not long ago from a good friend of mine. And I sighted it in and went and got me some really good ammunition. That's a big lead head on it. They're made, PPU makes. And you'll know it the minute you look at it. It is not a pointed bullet. It's a round nose bullet. It looks like a 30-30 round nose, and half the bullet is lead. And they make a quarter size, expansion in a deer. So they can be a really useful deer rifle because the performance of an SKS power is very similar to a 30-30. And so anything you can do with a 30-30, you can do with an SKS. James, speaking of froze, whenever I die, somebody will take all my antique tools to the dump because they don't know how to use them. I understand. Yeah, it's sad but true. I knew a gentleman that he did live in history, and he had collected these antique um, iron sets, spiders, stuff like that, Dutch ovens with legs, many of these 100+ years old, and he went and did live in history with them. And when he passed away, his daughter got them and took them to the local pawn shop and sold the whole lot for about $100. And there were Dutch ovens in there worth 200 because she didn't know what it was and she didn't want any of this stuff, and she just took it to the pawn shop and let it go. His handmade flintlock rifle that was probably 1,500-1,600. He paid to have that made by somebody with a big name. The guy gave him $75 for it. Gave her $75 for it. And when we found out about it, we went running over there to Mississippi to try to get to that pawn shop. And we got there, it was gone. Every bit of that was gone because he knew what he was getting. So, yeah, it is sad when stuff like that goes away. Kevin Smith, the Glocks really, yeah, they are kind of like the old trench knife. Good, good fighting / utility knife. Oh, Carla's cool. I haven't tried the Atlas yet. The Mighty Mo. Blackie, what's your opinion on multi-tools? Have you or would you ever use one out in the field? I have a multi-tool, and I had when the first Leatherman came out years ago. I've got one of them around here somewhere. I set one of the original in the leather pouch. I've used them many times for repairing vehicles, working on various things, etc. And in certain jobs, I carried one on my belt. And I've had Gerber and I've had other Leathermans on my belt. But I consider it a tool more than a knife. And I realized that many of the young guys today, you never had a pocket knife, you had a multi tool. So they sort of consider the multi tool to be a pocket knife that they carry. But to me, it was always just a tool. And I found that a Swiss Army knife was more useful to me in what I did than the multi tool. And I don't see many screws and Phillips heads and stuff on trees, as far as bushcraft too. But I carry the Victorinox Fieldmaster because it's got all the tools I need as a bushcrafter in the field. And I don't have a problem with people using multi-tools. I have friends that can do amazing things with a multi-tool, with the knives. I've seen them carve figure fours. I've seen them carve traps and make spoons and everything else with their multi-tools. So it's a very useful tool. It's just one that I personally haven't embraced so much. To me, it's a pair of pliers with accessories. And so I've got one in my Pathfinder. It's for there if I needed to repair something on the car. But I don't carry one on my person. So I hope that answers your question. Tom, man, would it be advantageous to have a website that would be specific for those old special tools? It would. Um, and I urge everybody that if you've got kids and you've got a collection of something, whatever it is, I don't care what it is, thimbles, spoons, tags, magazines, whatever, that is actually fairly valuable, make sure your kids know about it in case you're not around anymore. Because and where to go to pass it on if they want to do it. And that's one of the things I'm helping Grouch with. Is he's got a lot of antiques and he's got a lot of stuff that we're going through and finding the current value of them. And that's one of the things that you should pass on just in case. It'll kill Blackie. Oh, Cordell, good day. Thank you very much for tuning in. Blackie, what are some tips for getting deer to come in without breaking the law? Okay. Curiosity. You can override caution with curiosity. A trick we used to do is we would take a tampon and we would dip it in deer attractant or deer urine or something, and we'd hang it about 5 feet up in a tree, 40, 50 yards from us, but in a clear shot. And the deer would come up and they'd see it. It was white. They could smell it. And out of curiosity, you'd see them kind of, what is this? What is this? They find it. But when they'd stop and they'd stick that head back and put that nose up, that was the shot I was waiting for. He's dead still and he's got his head straight back, looking straight up. And so you can, if you can get them to be curious, you can override their caution. Hello, Miss Pam. Thanks for coming in. Oh, Carlos, sorry to hear that. Yeah, the Leatherman Surge are good sets. I know a lot of the GIs down here where I'm at, they'd want to carry the Leatherman to Sear School. And that's what they want to do. Go ahead. If LA to tote it, do it. Now, Pink, it is not a yuppie toy. It's just we're old school. We came up with Barlows and pocket knives, okay? Satchmo, kids today just want all new stuff. Well, yeah. Oh yeah, Gordon talking about got your dad's record collection. Christopher Evans, good evening. I had a young lady that I worked with that her dad had passed away, and he had a couple of guns, and asked would I come over and look at the guns and kind of give them an idea of what they could sell the guns for to make sure they didn't get swindled. And I said sure, and I went over there, and of course they're cleaning out the old farmhouse. And I looked at the guns, and they were good, rugged guns. Nothing, super, just good working guns. A Sears 3030, which is actually a Winchester by another name, and there was a Western Auto pump, which was a Mossberg 500, and I think a couple of Stevens 22 pistols, things like that. Single shot Stevens. And then as I looked out the kitchen window, there was this World War II U.S. Army foot lockers, two of them sitting out there by the burn pile. I went, whoa, 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 what are you doing with that? Well, she was all embarrassed. And I said, those lockers are worth something to collectors. And so I finally got out there and looked, and what it was is inside this, he had one of every Playboy, one of every Hustler, and one of every Penthouse that had ever been published. One new in the wrapper, unwrapped, and one he had read. That was his collection. And she was going to burn it. I went, before you do something stupid, let me call somebody. I called a friend of mine in Atlanta and told him roughly what I thought I had and where we were at. Excuse me, it was not Mississippi, it was Phoenix City. I told him we were about 2.5 hours out of Atlanta. He said, I'll be there. He drove down, and he's a appraiser. And he got on the kitchen floor and laid them out, figured out and everything. And he came in there and he told her, said, I'm going to make you an offer for the whole collection as is. I'm going to tell you that this is as much as I'm going to offer because I know who to call in Japan. You don't. And I'm going to make my payday out of this, but I will give you $35,000 right now for the collection. But I'm going to make my money bigger. I near about had to hold her up. Her knees buckled. She was about to burn that collection. So you never know what mom and dad had that you don't care nothing about that might be worth something. And there's a really good book out there called Trash to Treasure that gets you in touch with collectors, like Campbell's soup can labels. There's a collector group for that. Bottle tops, they're collectors, little bitty bottles, medicine bottles, baseball cards, name it, There's just all kinds of stuff that people throw it away. A good friend of mine riding motorcycles pulled off the side of the road down this dirt road answering nature's call. And it was a little dump where somebody come out here on the ditch on the side of the road and throwed out a bunch of stuff. And he looked down and there was a shoebox full of baseball cards. And he picked them up and got looking at it. And one of the cards in that box bought his next motorcycle. One card. People throwed it away, didn't know what it was. So always. Just got a pop-up says Panhandle under threat of a tropical system this weekend. Looks like that sucker may be turning north. I may get some storm out of it. That's true. I'm going to go tomorrow and start battening down the hatches. We'll see. When I get off here, I'll go look. Yeah, I hear you. It truly is amazing when something I've got. Give an example. 1958, my father did something heroic and saved a woman's life, risked his life to do it, and came to national attention because of that. and was named by the NTSB as the truck driver of the year. My dad won it twice. At the time he passed away, he was the only one that ever won it twice. And one part of him winning National Truck Driver of the Year was he got to meet the President of the United States. And so he went to Washington, and they had a big thing. He was on TV and all kinds of stuff, him and my mom. And they went to the Oval Office. But as luck would have it, the president was out of the country because of things going on somewhere else. And so he had to be out of the country unexpectedly. But Vice President Nixon was there to meet him. And so the picture was taken in the Oval Office in front of the presidential desk with my mother. And then in front of that, shaking hands, is Richard Nixon and my father. And Richard Nixon they blew it up for a picture about this big and then framed it and gave it to him before they left Washington. And down on the thing, Richard Nixon signed it and put a little personal sentiment onto it. Well, President Nixon signed everything. There's all kinds of napkins and T-shirts and everything that Nixon, as president, signed. Vice President Nixon hardly signed anything, and so the much bigger, more valuable collector is Vice President Nixon. So here is someone who's being awarded a national award. The president was out of the country for some national emergency or whatever. That's documented. Third, it was done by the White House press corps and an official photographer. And Nixon signed it with a personal thing. There's a collector in Atlanta that when I go away, pass away, my wife is supposed to contact him. He's already got it appraised, and that's going to take care of some last money because of it. And it was a picture my mom was going to throw away when I was 12 because it had my dad in it because they got divorced. And I kept it. I had to hide it in the barn for 5 years. Yep, you never know what's going to be important. Shane, and yeah, that's it. So my wife would throw away your military collection. Point out what's valuable. You know, Ken Albert, good night, brother. Be safe. It's one of those things where you never know what is, because I don't know. Not my forte. You know, if I walked in right now and there was comic books of manga, you know, the Japanese manga stuff, I wouldn't know Madam's House Cat, but I know those are very collectible. You know, we tend to focus on what we're interested in and we ignore the rest of it. So, and you can't blame people. I mean, we don't know, but if it's something you spend a lot of time and effort on and is worth something, make sure your family, your wife and all knows about it, just in case. And if she's got something you need to know, you know, you just never know what might be valuable. Correct. Tennessee Smokey talking about how he picked up a box of kitchen knives and they're old Hickory and Russells. Yeah. You know, I've done that. I've walked in and picked up Dutch ovens for $2 because they were rusty. You know, I've had axe heads, American-made axe heads from probably the 20s. That was in perfect shape. It just needed a handle, you know, and ring like crazy, hold an edge like crazy. You couldn't buy one of those axe heads today. That quality of steel and everything. And yet, they were using it for a doorstop at an antique place. They were literally using it for a doorstop. And I said, how much is the axe head? And I picked it up and looked at it and could tell it was an American-made axe. And when I did a little bit of research, I found out that it was probably about 1920s. I picked up at a surplus thing one time. It was listed as a fire axe. I've got it hanging up over here. Ugly, man, ugly. It was painted with red paint, and the handle had this spiral to it where it had been made on a lathe, and they had left it rough. And when you picked it up, you were sure, even though it was painted, you were sure you're going to get splinters out of this thing. And had a great big 5-pound head on it, heavy paint. And I had it as my dirty axe for probably 10 years. I paid like $10 for it, right? Grubbing axe. So if we got to cut roots, I used it. All I ever did was just keep it from having a rolled edge, you know. It was not truly blunt, but you know what I mean. It was not sharpened. And it was just sharp enough to cut roots and stuff like that. And if I had to cut something, I was afraid I was going to damage the axe, I grabbed it and saved my other good axe. Well, finally, after all those years, the handle finally gave up the ghost, and it warped to the point just, I didn't want to mess with it. And I decided to take it apart and maybe see if I could salvage that head. And I got the paint off of it, and I'm buffing it up, and I got laying, it says Gransford Brooks. It's hanging up right over here. It's a 5-pound head Gransford Brooks Swedish military fire axe from pre-World War II. And it was my grubbing axe. And so I put another handle in it. It's right over there. But even I thought, nah, it's just a junk axe. Well, I figured it was an East German or something, to be honest. It turned out to be a Gransford Brooks. And when I took it to Rooster at the Pathfinder, and he looked at it, and he said it's rare, not horribly rare, but it's a very uncommon axe. They didn't make many of those. And I put a short handle on it because that's the only handle I had that would fit that eye. And I use it as an in-tight lemon. I'm trying to limb on a tree that's really in tight. I don't let people play with that, and that one's dangerous because that it is so heavy you can't check swing it. You put the power to it, it's going to go a circle if you don't hit something. And Texas Joe, good evening. And so I turned it into that. But you know, you never know what you're going to find. Good old Gransford Brooks. Yeah, battle rattle collecting G.I. Joes, yes. Well, I mentioned in my videos, a friend of mine, he collects case knives. And I have my grandfather's case pocket knife. I have my father's case pocket knife. And I have the case pocket knife that my daddy gave me when I turned 16. Do you think I'm running around with woods with those in my pocket? Oh, no. You know, those are, they're kept in the house in the special place, you know. And with the birth certificates and stuff like that, that's what you grab if the house is burning. You grab this duffel and you go out the door. And I went over to his house one Christmas, probably 8 or 9 years ago now, or at least 5, 6, 7. And he hands me this pocket knife. And he's got knives up on the wall in his den. He don't bat an eye dropping $300 for some sort of rare case pocket knife. And so he hands me this 2-blade Stockman with bone handles on it, nickel steel bolsters and everything. He says, what do you think of that? And I looked at it, nice 2-blade Stockman, you know, a 2-blade trapper, I'm sorry. This isn't it, but something like this, you know, a 2-blade with a spade blade and then a pointed blade. Really nice. And I looked at it and he said, take a guess what that knife costs. Well, knowing him, you know, I don't know, $70, $80. And he said, $22 to my door. Now, did you get a steal? He said, no, it's a Rough Rider pocket knife. And the quality of the steel, the quality of everything else, it's as good as the case. And I'm starting to collect these now before they figure out what they got. And so you can buy these knives for less than $25. And I'm starting to collect them because side by side, they're just as good as my cases. But I can tote this in my pocket and I ain't got to worry about it. And so I started picking up Rough Rider pocket knives, and I really like them. They're good. I've done videos talking about them. Every time I do, I get attacked. Woo! All them collectors and everything jump all over me. Made in China. Yes, it is, but it's a good quality piece of steel. You know, holds an edge well, and it's 20-something bucks for a really nice pocket knife. So, You never know. James, yeah, can't find an axe that's been properly hung anymore. Hardware stores used to be embarrassed if it was shoddy axe. Yeah, and the grain in the correct alignment where it's not going to bust as soon as you start swinging it. I hear you. That's the reason for the most part. Um, I rehang my own, and I have bought online probably a dozen axe handles and sent them back, where they'd show up in the grain with just going off at wild angles. And then I have gone over here to Andalusia. There's an old-fashioned hardware store in Andalusia and one in Dothan. Place that business has been there and in operation since the 1800s. And go in and say, I need an axe handle, and they'll have a barrel with axe handles. And I went in and picked out the axe handle I wanted with the grain like I wanted. And Case Sodbuster Jr., decent knife. Correct, Tim Pierce. If it's got USMC on it, it can bring big money, especially if it's something not that common. You know, something they had used or whatever. Oh, Lamb, cool. We got a picture with you and Reagan. That is awesome. Yeah. Chris Evans, those Swedish mess kits tell you something about increasing value. I agree. I remember when those things were $20. You know, Sportsman's Guide had them for $20. I held one in my hand probably 50 times back in the 80s at the old MP Surplus in Pinkard and didn't know what it was. Yeah, it's a cook set of some kind, you know, and I really didn't know what it was. Didn't understand what it was, and it was years later I finally figured out what I was looking at. They had one of the Stonebridge folding lanterns in there, original. Whoop, got thunder and lightning coming. And ooh, that shook the house with that one. Had me a thunderhead about to roll over. We're going to be getting off in just a minute anyway. But I've held them in my hand, you know, and boy, if I could step back in time, oh boy, would I have, you know, you give me just a little bit of money and a little bit of time and let me hop to 3 or 4 places. The things I would come home with. Well, guys, it's been an hour and 37 minutes, and I got thunder and lightning coming. I'm hearing it cracking and popping, and that last boom actually rattled the room I'm in a little bit. So let's go ahead and call it quits for the night so I can get off this internet so lightning don't run in and take out my system. Guys, thank you very much for dropping in and talking with me. I really, really appreciate it. I look forward to this every week. And I will be here again next Thursday night, unless something comes up, which case I'll try to let y'all know. Till then, guys, safe journeys. Have a great night, and God bless every one of you.